Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Art. Happy birthday to you.
Having gained popularity in the late 70s and early 80s, many horror fans grew up watching slasher films. However, due to its oversaturation and the shift in the horror genre to paranormal films, slasher films began to fizzle out in the late 80s through the mid 90s, with one exception, and that is Ghostface. Maybe it was the stale formula being repeated over and over again. Maybe there was a lack of personality in the mass killers. Either way, the slasher subgenre was dead. That is until recently. Now, not only have we seen the return of existing and established slashers from the golden era of those films, but we have seen an influx of countless new slashers emerging and making it unsafe for teenagers again. This month, we are celebrating here at Nerdbox the 15-year anniversary of Art the Clown's debut, and we've brought in some experts to talk about Art's influence on the horror genre over the last few years. All right, with me first, returning my frequent co-host on Five Things, and that is Mr. Danny V from the Danny Vega Show.
What's going on, everybody?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing good, Dave. Doing good as always. Super excited for this subject. I mean, because of your influence, man, you reignited the fire for horror films, putting me onto Terrifier and a bunch of others. So I'm super excited to talk all about it, man.
All right. Also with us is Killjoy Jake.
What is up, my dudes? How's it going?
Woo!
Right. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good, man. Fantastic.
We're ready to talk some slashers, right? But we got to bring in a producer from Terrifier 2 and Stream, returning to Nerdbox, and that is Mr. Marcus McGill.
What up, brothers? What up? What's going on, fellas? Good to be back. Always good to be around good folks and well knowledgeable brothers like right here on this panel. So let's do this.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is going to be a fun subject. We'll plug everything at the end because I think we should kind of dive into things. So let's jump into our first question. Dan, I'm going to start with you. So what is it about the golden era of slasher films, 70s through some of the 90s, that you love?
Man, so for people that have been watching, our channel for a while, I'm a big Friday the 13th fan, right? And ever since I was a kid, and it was something different. So at the time, yes, Jason was a kind of ripoff of Michael Myers, because you even hear it on the behind the scenes Netflix documentary and all this jazz. If you guys haven't watched it, I highly recommend you do it. But they wanted something different because Michael Myers was not gory, right? It was more on some imagination, and they said, hey, we want it to be the first film of gore, right? It was not as gory as today, but at the time to actually show blood. But also the difference between Michael and Jason was like a titan on Earth. Like, no matter what you did to this guy, it didn't matter because he would just disappear, reappear. You can hit him, you can impale him, whatever, and he just comes back up. The iconic sitting up that Michael Myers had, right? Jason didn't need that. Jason didn't need that. It was kind of like, okay, I'm taking that right out and I'm going to murder you brutally, right? And so then when you have classics like Freddy playing on different people's fears, I think that's one thing that era did better than today. It stood with the times of what people feared the most in that era, right? Teenagers in the middle of the woods, no adults, no cell phones, no nothing, right? It was scary to have somebody doing that. Same thing with Michael, Suburbia, where nothing's supposed to happen. and you have the stalker, crazy stalker on the loose, right? Freddy Krueger, you fall asleep, oh my gosh, nightmares that you can actually die from. And even though I don't consider this horror, Jaws was incredible. It made the fear of sharks go way up, right? So I think that's what I love about that time frame for horror, is it really played on people's fears for that generation, which I think nowadays is kind of missing. I think they're trying to just reignite something that people are not that afraid of anymore.
Yeah. Jake, how about you?
I love slashers for a lot of reasons, but I think the biggest one is you can kind of look at every slasher that comes out after Halloween that essentially cracks the first egg. But all these directors and creatives and stuff take their own approach to pretty much the same idea, utilizing and expanding upon different aspects of it. You know what I mean? Like Friday, like you were just talking about, is much gorier. It is essentially, in a way, a similar movie, but it's a murder mystery, it's gorier, it features a totally different location than Suburbia, it's maybe even saying something different. And I love that. I love that every kind of bigger slasher out there has something else to say about just the way that a typical one of these movies would flow. Like It Follows, I consider to be a slasher. Some people don't like it because I think it expands on like different aspects to slasher movies than what you would expect. But that's what I really appreciate about it. Some of my favorite slasher movies are the ones that will just reinvent the whole concept that as we know it. It's super familiar. It's nothing like, breaking the ice in a whole new way. But I just love that every slasher movie is just what is this creative's favorite aspect to these kind of movies, and how are we going to expand on that and do it differently? Like I wouldn't say that Terrifier is the same as Halloween, even though they're clearly influenced by that. You know what I mean? That's what I love about it so much. It's kind of the same thing every time, but it's also kind of this creative's version of it, which is why I will keep coming back to the genre for many years to come.
Yeah, good point. Marcus?
I would say with slashers, I would say the writers, the creators, during this golden era from the 70s to 90s, when you're dealing with real life monsters like John Wayne Gacy and other serial killers, these writers kind of created those stories from that. And that's one of the biggest fear that would hit close to home, were real life people that will prey on you. You have these ghost stories, people believe in the supernatural and things like that, but one of the biggest fear is being preyed, upon other folks, So that golden era of slashers, creating, the Jasons, the Michael Myers, the Leatherfaces, the Candyman, it just hit so close to home that people just gravitated towards, because it just incited that fear in them, like Danny was talking about earlier. And it just made people, like I said, gravitate to it,
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head for me, because when I was 4 or 5 years old, one of the first two horror movies that I seen, I don't know which order it was The Thing and American Werewolf in London. Now, I watched those movies, loved those movies,
nice.
but it wasn't until I saw Halloween 2 and Nightmare on Elm Street where I actually got nightmares from horror films. And I think, Mark's like you're saying, like that being preyed on by someone who you don't know. Like in the 80s back then, it was, hey, you have two things to be afraid of. Quicksand, because it's around every single corner, and then the other one is kidnappers. So it's like, oh my god, yes. Here I go, I got slashers right now dealing with in my face.
And Dave, can I chime in real quick? You both just said something. Like my first horror that obviously ignited that. One, I don't know why. I guess it's because of a dead-looking guy. Was Tales from the Crypt. That scared the shit out of me. But two was Chucky, because I was a kid when that came out. So it was like, oh, my dolls can turn to real life, and then obviously Puppet Master after that, and et cetera, et cetera. But dude, that was the epitome of preying on people's fears, as you two are saying. Sorry, I just had to chime in because, damn it, that was good.
Hey man, I had a My Buddy doll too. Threw it in the fireplace after Child's
I think that My Buddy doll was creepier than Chucky.
Oh man.
All right. Well, slashers never went away. They've been here ever since the 80s, the 90s. They've kind of just faded into the foreground. And, why do you think that is? Why did they fade into the foreground? We've had two other great slashers these last 20 years. We had Sam from Trick or Treat, and we have Leslie Vernon from Behind the Mask. So, Jake, what do you think happened there?
While I love both of those films, Trick or Treat and Behind the Mask, I think both of them are just a little more obscure. Like, I think nowadays they're, heralded as classics, but at the time, I think Trick or Treat was like direct to video and all that. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if most people knew Sam from Spirit Halloween versus the movie, which is unfortunate. Like, it's very unfortunate because both of these movies are fantastic and should have gotten wider releases, but they unfortunately didn't. And I feel like if they did, like, it would be a whole different story. Like slashers would look way different than how they did in the thousands and the 2010s. But I love both of these movies. I see both of these characters as icons, but they just didn't get the popularity of your Freddys, your Jasons, your Michaels. And I think that's a shame. It really is. There just hasn't really been too many icons besides, Art the Clown. Like what? The Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. Pennywise, is he a slasher? No, not really. There has been horror icons in the past like 20 years, just not a lot of slashers, and it's unfortunate. A lot of these just flew under the radar, and I think I'm just happy that they have a lot more light shed on them today.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, other ones like The Collector, Chrome Skull. Marcus, what do you think?
I hate that films like Trick or Treat and Behind the Mask just get pushed to the back. They didn't get the promotion like some of these other heavy hitter slashers gotten. They didn't have that hype train behind them. But it's great that people are gravitating to them and they have become cult classics. But with regards to slashers in general, getting pushed to the background, I just think, man, it's these studios. Nothing to get, saying anything bad against them, but that's what put butts in seats, that genre, that subgenre of horror. So slashers haven't really been making the money up until now, recently with the Scream coming back, X, what are some of the other great ones right now? You have a few right now. Terrifier, of course, the big one. So yeah, man, I'm hoping that these films, it's my favorite subgenre of horror, so I hope they come back, even bigger. So
yeah. I worked at Blockbuster, and the first time that I saw Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, I stayed up to 3 a.m. and watched it. I was just hooked as soon as I put it on, and it's one of the few horror films that I can recommend to every single person that asks me for something that they've never seen before, that they haven't seen, and then that they'll like. And I think in my final years at Blockbuster, I only ever had one person come back and say they didn't like it. And I'm only able to do this with 2 films. It's that one and then The Boondock Saints. I can always recommend those films. I know somebody hasn't seen it and they'll always enjoy it. But yeah, I wonder, and I haven't done the research, but I wonder how much studio involvement, like you were saying, Marcus, they got in there, kind of manipulated things and just killed out the slashes. Because I think like when Scream came out, then you got all the WB actors and actresses showing up in horror films and all these pretty people. Josh Hartnett said in H2O in an interview for that, he's like, I went and cut my own hair because kids back then didn't look all pretty like they were showing them in horror movies. And I think that's what kind of killed it. I know it killed it for me. How about you, Danny? What do you think?
So a couple things. So Trick or Treat, yes, like Marcus said, became like a really cult classic. Like I said, I used to work for Universal. So when Trick or Treat, when he came up for Halloween Horror Nights, you would be surprised how many people realize who that was. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing it, right? So it's definitely a cult classic. Yeah, it's, oh my gosh. When Sam was there, like everyone literally lost their minds, right? They had a whole section for Trick or Treat. The thing is, though, is that I think what happened with the slasher films was that Scream, the reason why I feel it was the last relevant slasher, like as an icon, and also is coming back and is doing well, is because Scream adapted to the times, right? So Perfect example. Scream was the first one that Wes Craven did that it basically put us in the movie, because we're all like, oh, if we were in a horror film, this is what we would do, right? And so it was kind of like this meta thing that was happening for the first time in a horror genre, subgenre, right? And then so now you're like, oh, okay, cool. Then again, the reveal that for the first time was not one killer, it was two killers. Now we can always predict, oh, it's going to be two killers, right? But for the first time, it made everyone lose their minds, because it was just like, you're used to Freddy, you're used to Jason, you're used to Leatherface, and now you have Ghostface, and you're like, oh, I wonder who it is. Oh my God, it's two people, right? And so I think, and especially with Scream 5, the first opening credits was everything was digital. Everything was digital, and all of a sudden is like, oh, lock the door. Nope, unlock the door. And so now it put people's fear in, because like, this is the advanced security system of the times. So that's why I think Ghostface right now is a current icon. But for me, where Trick or Treat and other movies have fell, was that, again, it wasn't playing to people's fears of the time. Now, don't get me wrong, it's an incredible film. I feel like Trick or Treat is the Quentin Tarantino of horror films, right? Doing the different plots happening at the same time and how they connect. But for like a slasher icon, I think that's what happened. I think it's just like, okay, we're past the supernatural stuff, because even supernatural movies now are not doing that well. I think we're all past that, right? But it's just like, okay, what do people fear now? And again, that's where Ghostface is playing upon it, right? And another, I guess you could call this a slasher, but like a mystery. One that I loved that was like, ooh, was Wolf Creek. You remember that? They were in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. They were in the middle of nowhere in Australia. They had no idea what was happening. And you had this dude praying and stalking them. That's scary. Why? Because when people travel, they're afraid. They're always told, watch your surroundings. You're going to get snatched, or you're going to get robbed, and yada, yada. So even though that never became a big icon either, it was one of those like, oh, shoot. That's why I think it did very well for me personally. But I think that's what we're missing, right? I think that's what we're missing right now for an icon. And that's why I love that, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, about how art differs, right? Because it's just what is happening now for people. So I'll elaborate that a little bit later. I don't want to go on a whole TED talk for the audience.
All right, so you mentioned something interesting, and this may be something that's slowly getting out there. Most people may know about it, some people may not know about it. But Scream is actually not the first slasher film with two killers in it.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to quiz you all on it, or if you want to reveal it, but do any of you know if there is one or more movies that came out before Scream with two killers?
Hold on, but was it like the same person behind the mask?
Hold on, I'm thinking.
Nope. Two
okay.
people.
Well, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. The one icon was revealed to be two people.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
An article dropped on it today on Screen Rant talking about the first movie revealing two different people being the killer. Came out 15 years before Scream, but one actually came out all the way back in 1972, and I just found that out this past Christmas when I was going through looking for Christmas horror films. So I know of two. Do either of you know of other ones?
Black
the
Christmas.
Only one that I know, but I think it was after Scream, was the Halloween movie. Was it H2O that it revealed the copycat, or they were supposed to do a copycat? The original plan was. Yeah, that's the only one that I know of for one icon, but no.
The Strangers is coming to mind, but I know that's after Scream. I don't know.
Two killers.
All right. Anybody knows? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear it. I don't want to give out the movie titles. I'll let you guys know after we're done recording, because I don't want to spoil movies for anybody if they do come across these movies. But yeah. So I saw that today. It's funny that you bring that up too. So.
Yeah, but I meant one horror icon as two people, but I got you.
Oh yeah, these definitely weren't horror icons, and in fact, that 1972 Christmas horror movie, that was just really bad. It was really bad, and by the time I got to the reveal, it didn't make it any better.
Oh god.
Oh, man.
All right, so Marcus, perfect person to start this question with. So, why do you think Art the Clown has played into not only the resurgence of slasher films, but also horror in general? It's kind of influencing some of the things that are going on in some other horror movies.
I just think Art, one, word of mouth played a big part with Art. You know, people saw David at the conventions, and he was such a lovable guy, but the way he embodied the character after Mike, like Mike did a phenomenal job with the character in the shorts, you know, in the Night Circle and the first Terrifier short film and All Hallows Eve. And David, being that theater actor that he is, took what Mike did and just took it to a whole nother level with his mime skills and his even the facial expressions with the prosthetic on and his movements. People just fell in love with the character and found him funny without even him speaking a word. And he's totally opposite of what Pennywise is. So I think the new generation gravitated to it quicker than we did, our generation did. But what Damien did with as far as the kills and the gore, we fell in love with it instantly, and it told a whole nother story for us, our generation compared to the younger generation. So I think the character himself is just crossed the lines of that generational gap of horror fans and bringing us all together. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I was I still am an admin for the Horror Family, and on our page and in our group, starting to see a lot of chatter that was coming up right around the time of Terrifier being released. And a lot of people were pulling up All Hallows Eve and Terrifier, and they're like, wait a minute, are these films connected? Is it the same clown? And so forth. So seeing all of that buzz is what drew me into watching it on Netflix. And as soon as I watched it, was like, wow, this is great. Like you mentioned, what Dave brought to the character was fun. It made it fun again. And even having the fake out final girl, having Tara in that movie where you think she's the final girl and she's going to succeed, and then bam, Art turns it on her. It's like, what the hell just happened? So yeah, great one there. Yeah, good points. How about you, Danny? What are you thinking?
So there's a lot to unpack, right? So for me, I think with Art, man, it's one of those, it plays to a current fear that besides it, I personally don't think any other clown movie has done, right? It's play on the fear of clowns, number one. Number two, it was so much homage to other horror films. It was filmed like an 80s film, so you have that cheesy campiness. Also, you have a killer that is completely silent, right? So not in such a sense of a mime, but think about it. Michael Myers was silent, and so was Jason, right? So you have that. And then you have, like you guys said, him being funny, right? Like Freddy Krueger sometimes would be funny, but this time it was without dialogue. And so it's not a cheesy campiness. It's more of a clown being a clown, right? And that's what made it funny. It's just like, I hurt you, ha ha ha, right? But without even any sound effects, which sometimes, as me and you have spoke about before, Dave, is that the one thing that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, did that was amazing, right? Was that sometimes you didn't even see the kills, right? And you just heard the screams, and that plays on fear right there. And now this did the opposite. You're seeing everything, but there's nothing coming out of this guy. You don't know what he's thinking. You don't know anything, just the facial expressions that are happening. And then we get the gore aspect. And we get the gore aspect that, some people absolutely love in horror films. So I think what Art brought to the table was just a lot of different things. And also what Terrifier 2 did for me personally, that kind of kept me in, because I was like, all right, where is this going, right? Because now Art is supernatural, right? You didn't think he was supernatural. He was just a guy, but now it's revealed he's supernatural. Okay, cool, level up. But then when you introduce the demon of his first kill, the little girl, all of a sudden now it's like, well, who is this character? Not a lot is revealed or anything. So now you're like, who is this character? What is happening? What is her play? And then when you see it's only tidbits, it's like breadcrumbs. Now you want to know more in part 3. And then also, it never revealed why their dad had those visions in the first place, right? Everyone has theories. Oh, the family's cursed or whatever. But there's nothing that tells you that, and it just draws you in for the next film. So I think that's what is incredible about what Terrifier is doing, is giving you all the classic homages, but while just pulling you into like, hey, something that's similar but different, which I've been telling you that Scream needs to start doing, because part 5 was like part 1, and then part 6 was just like part 2. So I'm like, if we do part 7 like part 3, it's totally expected, right? But it has to be similar but different, and that's what Terrifier is doing, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, paying homage without actually ripping things off or making it distracting is a big thing. Yeah. Jake, how about you?
You know, I just think he's a silly little guy, and I like that about him. No, but seriously, I think Art the Clown, like the biggest thing with the Terrifier movies is like it's throwing it back to the 80s. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but with the last 5 years of horror, you know, we've had things like, okay, this is more than 5 years, but like The Witch, Hereditary, all these big, like, as they say, what is it, elevated horror? I hate that term, but that's just what it's called, unfortunately. I enjoy these movies. They're very fun. I think they're very like deep thinkers, whatever, but it's nice to have a throwback to something like the 80s, where it's just, this is a guy killing people and it's as simple as that. Sometimes that's all that horror needs to be, and that's okay. A lot of movies nowadays, I think, have forgotten that element. Everything has to say something. I'm like, why? Why does everything have to say something? Why can't we just have fun with a horror film? And Terrifier is getting us back to that, which is what I love. It's almost like we're kicking off this new era of horror, as it does. You know, we're always going through new phases, new trends, whatever. And we're kicking it off with something that's a throwback, but it's also something new as well. Like, I think, yes, it's very inspired by, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, Michael Myers, all these different slashers that were big from the past, but it's also offering something new, and that's what I love about it so much. It's not just the same conversation. There's so much more to unpack with Art the Clown. I actually did a video recently where I was talking about how I think Art the Clown's even more mysterious than a Michael Myers. Like, you, off the bat in Halloween, you know his backstory. You know this is the kid that stabbed his sister in the tits or whatever all the way back in the day. Now, Art the Clown, I'm quoting Little John or whatever from Halloween Kills, but what's great about Art is, like, you don't know, is he a person? Is he a demon? What the fuck is he? Like, who is this guy? I don't know, and that's what I love so much about him. Like, they could make 8 more Terrifier films, and I would watch all of them, because I need to know. I need to get to the bottom of this, and on top of that, I love watching this silly little goofball just have a great time stabbing people. So, I don't know, man. I love these movies, and I think that this is going to have a big... It already has, but I think it's going to have this big impact on the horror genre moving forward. You're gonna see clones and imitators, and we might already be at that point now. I love it though. I mean, imitation is the highest form of flattery and all that, right? So I think that it's gonna be a great new wave of horror moving forward now.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% too. And I think one of the things that you mentioned is a big thing, right? And it's not something that we have seen in all slasher films, just except Scream. The mystery behind it, right? Maybe that's why things kind of faded out in the 80s and 90s, because, you know, you knew who Freddy was, you knew who Michael was, you knew it's like we're getting the same thing recycled over and over, but with Scream and with Terrifier, it's like, all right, well, you didn't give me all the details, so now I got to figure out what's going on and what's happening next. So that's a great point to call out there.
Absolutely. I love the mystery of this franchise so much. Like, I don't even want all the answers, too. You know, that's another thing that I want to add. Like, I think so many people saw Terrifier 2, and I heard a lot of people say, like, well, you know, what was the Clown Cafe? What was all this and that? I'm like, but can't we just sit in the mystery for a little bit? Can we just enjoy this bizarre thing that's happening? Like, that's what I love so much about these movies, is that we don't know the answers, and more questions are being thrown at us to make it even more crazy and complex. I love it. It's so much more. It's so much fun. I can't wait for Terrifier 3.
Yeah. Marcus and I talk about that, and I said, Marcus, you got to tell Damien, man, leave the mystery in. Don't explain it. Give us a little breadcrumb. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah. And
Don't
to hop
give away
on that
everything.
bandwagon, I like the, like you said, it's the imagery, right? Instead of this is exactly what it is. I mean, Art throws her down a hole that's red. It looks like hell, pretty much, right? And then
Right.
she ends up in the clown cafe in real time. Now it's not
Clown
just
cafe.
yeah, right. So, and it's in real time though this time, because remember, first she dreamed it, so it's like, oh, it was just a nightmare, whatever. But now she's living her nightmare by drowning in the damn tank, right? And so it's kind of one of those, like, is that hell? Is that her personal hell? Is this purgatory, or is this Art's realm? We don't know. The mystery of it, like you said, it just nails it, man. And it's just all the imagery of what it possibly could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you kind of segued us into it. So, Jake, so I guess you're good for 8 films, 9 films, 10 films.
Art the Clown, 100 years. Keep them coming. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I like 2 is just one of my favorite movies just of all time. I love it. It's so much fun. It's everything you could ever love about an 80s slasher, but times 100. I think it's so great. I don't know. So yes, I think that I'm not only am I excited for 3, I want 4, I want 5, I want 7, I want 56. Keep them coming.
How about you, Marcus?
Man, as long as Damien
All right.
can
Danny, how about you?
keep
Oh,
telling
this is
the
when
good
the heels
story
coming
with
in,
him,
boys.
bring
Danny
it on.
Vega.
Oh.
I feel
Bring
it.
it on.
I feel it. I feel it. Right. I don't want it. I don't want it to prolong too long. I think that's what killed the other ones, to be honest. We have what, 10 to 11 Jasons, right? Not including the remakes, right? Same thing with Nightmare on Elm Street. You have what, 8 or something like that in total. Michael Myers, same thing. Like, I think that's what killed their icons. That's why no one cares for them anymore. So when we see a remake, we're like, oh, right? It's the same. It's the same thing with Leatherface. I mean, the first reboot of Texas Chainsaw with Jessica Biel was pretty dope, right? However, after that, it was just like, oh. And then they remade the last one, and people were like, oh, and I heard it was trash, right? So I didn't even get to watch it yet. But yeah, I heard it was trash. I'm gonna stick to my spider senses.
It's not that bad. Not that bad.
It's not that bad.
No.
Yeah, it's a little overhated.
See, trash.
That's
All right,
that's
cool.
fair. That that's I can't even argue with that.
See, but
kills
that's
were
what I'm
good.
saying. I really
The
would
kills were
love
great,
them
but-
to preserve art as something that lasts over the generations. That it's one of those movies that they didn't kill his icon by overdoing it, oversaturating his films. So 3 or 4, I'm good. You know what I mean? To wrap up his story, but to get to 10, I think you're following the footsteps into, his demise as a horror icon. Be one of those that when we see another Art the Clown thing, we're like, oh Jesus Christ, not again. So that's just me personally, because I think what they're doing is fantastic. I think is a breath of fresh air. Let's leave it at that. That's just my personal opinion.
Let me ask you this, Danny. What if he switched it over to the little pale girl?
Then again, now we're gonna get into Marvel subgenres. Then there's a demon of a demon. All the clown cafe people are gonna have their own sub stories.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Then we're like Disney and Marvel, and then it's just, oh my god, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. I'm thinking if you can keep the writing good and space it out, don't crank it out every single year. Every couple years is good. And I think we can get a good 5 or 6 out of them. Having seen like some of the fan films for Friday the 13th, like Never Hike Alone 2 and the first one, stories were original, and it took Jason into a different aspect, and it made it fun and refreshing again. Right? And Never Hike Alone, the first one, you didn't have Jason going on a mass killing spree. You have a hiker that stumbles across the Crystal Lake, and then he starts getting stalked by Jason, and that played out really good. So I think if the story's kept good and we spaced it out nice, I think we can get a good 5-6 films out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of
I'm
with you
waiting.
here. Wow, sorry, everyone just talked at the same time. Oh no, I'm with you though, man. Because like I think if the quality's still there, keep them coming. But like with everything, sometimes there's just not more story to tell, and that's okay. That's also not a bad thing either. So it's really a play it by ear thing, I think, at its core.
Yeah, I could agree with Jake on that one. I mean, the first remake of Rob Zombie's Halloween, that was a different take on Michael's backstory. Abusive family, he started killing animals, yada yada. He already had those psychotic tendencies, yada yada yada. That was a pretty cool take. It's just when you got to Halloween 2 that it got all spiritual and weird, like Rob Zombie does, right? That's when you lose a lot of people. And so that's what I'm afraid, for art. And that's like when we get back to the newest Halloween, right? The first out of the trilogy. It was great. You went back to the basics. Awesome. That was really cool. It's a direct sequel. He's been locked up this entire time. All the other stories that we saw were just stories that were told. Awesome, right? But then you come to 2 and you're like, wait, he was supposed to be an evil incarnate, sure, but he wasn't a tank. But now he's a tank. Yeah. He's getting stronger like the Hulk. And then the third one, you're just like, dude, what happened? I don't understand it. The second one, he was a tank. Now he's a frail old man. And then, I don't want that for art. I'm just gonna be that guy. I'm just gonna be a broken record on that one. Just no.
You don't want old man art?
No.
In like 20 years from now, you don't want old man art? Come on.
Okay. Well, here, listen, old man art, that if he's still the same as a tank, supernatural and all that jazz, sure. But I don't want old man art that all of a sudden he's just an old man. After all these films, he was a tank. What are we doing?
Minute. I'm gonna be the heel. I was not a fan of Blumhouse's trilogy of Halloween at all. Everything, it was just, it was crapola for me.
I could agree with that.
Yeah, I think with H2, we took that trilogy of emotions and shoved it all in H2 because, man, H2 opened amazing. That hospital scene in H2 was so damn good, and I was so pumped in the theaters when I was seeing that. It's like, oh my God, this is going to be epic, and then we just slowly went off the cliff, and it's like, I left the movie theater, and it's like, oh my God, this is the worst movie after having one of the best intros ever.
You pull a Fonzie, bro. That's what happens when you pull a Fonzie jumping over that shark. That is it.
Yeah, I know for me, so I know I didn't send you guys this question, but like I've seen Terrifier in the theaters double digits, and I've never had an issue with the runtime. So it hasn't aged poorly on me. Like The Dark Knight, if I go back and watch it, it's like, all right, let me get to all of the Joker scenes and a couple Batman scenes. I don't need all this filler in between. And with some of the Avenger movies too, it's like, all right, I can skip around a little bit because I don't want to hear this. But I haven't gotten tired of how long it is. And I think we've seen that influence in some of the horror movies that are coming out. So what do you think about 2 hour plus horror movies? Marcus, I'll go with you.
Man, again, it's all about the writing and hitting those beats at the right moment. It'll make the movie just fly by, like you said, with Terrifier 2, man, you don't feel that runtime, at all. And I'm trying to think of another long horror movie as of late that I just really didn't feel the runtime.
Yeah, what do you think? Oh, go ahead, Jake. What do you think?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm just talking. Look at me. No, but like, I'll be quick. Honestly, I think like my biggest thing with movies is like, we shouldn't go into writing a movie saying like, this is going to be 3 hours long. You know what I mean? It's like, well, with what? What are you going to do for 3 hours that's going to keep my interest? I think with Terrifier 2, what I love about it is I don't think it drags. I've seen the movie. I'm probably with you, man. I've probably seen it like way more than I'm happy to admit. But I don't feel it drags because everything about it is like super interesting. Everything keeps my attention. I have seen 2.5 hour movies that are like, dude, why is this 2.5 hours? You could have cut out that whole middle bit or whatever. But I just don't feel that way about Art the Clown. Like I'm always having a good time. I'm in the boat that Terrifier 3 should be 3 hours personally. So like as long as what you're doing is interesting, yeah, make it that long. But then there's movies like Host from 2020, which is 60 minutes long and it's perfect. It does not need to be a second longer than it is. It's just my opinion. I personally love it. I think it's like just the right runtime and pacing and all that. Perfect. Not every movie Yeah, I enjoy it. It doesn't need to be 90 minutes. Like, why would that need to be 90 minutes? I hate that we've normalized that. Like, 90 minutes is like the standard. It's like, why can't we have 60-minute movies? Why can't we have 3-hour movies either? So I don't know. Runtime to me, it all depends on what the content of your story entails.
Good point. Good point. Danny, any closing on that?
Yeah. So I agree with Marcus and Jake. The deal is, besides writing and directing, you got to make sure the studio doesn't come in and start butchering it, right? We heard that many times in even other genres. I mean, look at the Amazing Spider-Man 2. A lot of it did not make sense, but then when you heard the original cut of what it's supposed to be, you're like, why wasn't that in the movie, right? And it was because, like Jake said, it was like, oh, well, it has to be this short or it has to be this long. And you're like, dude, just write a good story and keep it at that. And if you can trim away some fat, sure, right? But it shouldn't be we need to add this to make it this long. We shouldn't take away from this to make it this long, right? And Marcus hit it. You have to have the right writing, you have to have the right directing to hit the beats, right? The one thing that I said it all the time, it's a really long movie. It's not a horror genre, but that's what I felt about Zack Snyder's Justice League. I did not feel it at all, right? I was sitting there at home and I was like, what time is it? Holy shit, I've been here for 4 hours, right? And I was just like, that's insane to me, because it was interesting when you finally got everyone's individual backstories, yada, yada. But for horror, it could be the same way. For horror, it could be the exact same way. For Terrifier, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's the first horror movie that I literally, because my busy schedule, that I actually stopped, paused the movie, or just went out, did about my day, and come back and was still interested. Especially for Horrifier 2. So it's one of those that that's a really good thing that they need to keep doing. That to the point that people are like, oh shoot, I got to go to work. Turn it off and be like, when I get back home, I got to finish it, right? That's what we need to do, instead of, oh, well, I guess I started this movie, so I guess I have to finish it, right? There's two totally different things going on here. So,
yeah.
That's what I think that should happen overall for the next couple of films, if they do the next couple of films. So,
all right. Well, before we get to wrap up, any questions that any of you have that you want to ask? We're going right to the wrap-up. Stanley, what do you got going on? Where can people find you?
All right, so guys, I've seen it, by the way, from you guys at Nerdbox. Thank you so much for adding some subscribers to a channel that I haven't even touched in a hot minute. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. I saw numbers up and I was like, wait, what? But yeah, so I, obviously with my busy schedule, I'm trying to find balance. And I actually, in the talks right now, even though the Scream short is postponed right now, my other short that I've been wanting to do for a long time, I'm already in talks with how to get that done. And then our good friend Dave Ryan Robertson has a short that he wants me to film for him. So that's also what's next in the arsenal. So hopefully that happens sooner than later for both those projects. And I'm super excited to shoot and direct those. So it's gonna be nice.
All right. Where can they find you again at? What? Where?
At the Danny Vega Show on the YouTube channel. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Jake, how about you? Where can people find you? And are you going to be working on any more fan films or anything in the upcoming future?
Well, first of all, you can find me at Killjoy Jake on the old YouTubes. So go subscribe if you want. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Do what you want. You're a human being with free will. But I am working on a short film right now. I don't want to say what it is, but it's a slasher. I can tell you that much. I'm very excited for it. It should come out next spring.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Marcus, how about you? What's going on in your world? What are you working on?
Currently, I just wrapped a short film called Morning Sacrifice. It is a vampire love story that isn't Twilight. So I don't want Danny coming from my head. It's not Twilight. More along the lines of like Queen of the Damned.
Nice.
And then Stream coming out 2024, so keep your eyes out for that. So, yeah.
Oh, I feel left out. I don't have any films that I'm working on. Maybe someday. All right. Well, you heard from everybody. Let us know what you think about Art the Clown, his influences on horror. Drop it in the comments. Go check out Jake and Danny's channels. Subscribe. I'll tell you, go subscribe. You'll get some good content there. Please do that. Don't forget to do that for our channel as well. And do all the fun things like subscribe, comment, and have a great day. And be on the lookout for a lot of Terrifier stuff this month. So, see ya.
Peace.